Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. Jamie, it is the Wednesday after the Notre Dame regular season ends. They end the season with a 38-27 loss to the USC Trojans, and we are officially into portal season. We're officially into finding out when players are coming back season, trying to wrap up the recruiting class and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you to everyone for tuning in already. Joe Bro says, let's go. So we will let's go. So if you're just joining the show right now, and if you haven't seen our show before, or if you're watching on replay, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. All right. That's what we need for to get the show, more eyes on the show, and get our content out there. So thank you very much to everyone for tuning in. Rajan says, my house is looking festive. This is not my house. I have the internet is being weird at my house. So I'm at my parents' house. So that's why it is already looking that way. They are doing that. So that's what I'm doing today. The baby beast came in with the positivity, of course, right away. Notre Dame's offense will be elite next year. All right, then let's do it. Joe Bro says it's flip season, right? Flip season. So we're going to talk about all those things today. Jamie, why don't we kick off the show with some surprising news? I think we got yesterday. I did not expect to hear an announcement on any players at this point announcing that they'll be coming back for next season, but Cam Hart just dropping the hammer and just letting it out there. He's going to come back next year. Huge surprise to me. I think a huge surprise to everybody. I think people felt like with the injuries to his shoulder, he'd had a bunch of shoulder problems. He had that last year, and then he had it again this year. His arm is in a sling, right? He got hurt against Boston College, and we saw him pregame, and he's in a sling. So that's obviously not a good sign for his, his shoulder, prospects going forward. But he says he's coming back, and that's a huge addition for the Notre Dame defense. Getting him back. Because you can just kind of pencil him and Ben Morrison in as the two starters at corner, and they played the most snaps this year at that corner position. So, Jamie, what is your take on that?
I think it's huge, right? And I think, you can throw in Clarence Lewis and Jaden Mickey there too. They're going to have 4 of the top 5 corners back. Obviously, they missed Cam Hart in the USC game a lot. I think, that would have been something that could have been huge for them. I have to think that, I don't know, I know there was a lot of buzz, oh, he's leaving for sure. And I was like, wait until this guy gets the feedback, because I didn't think he was going to get he wasn't going to get day 2 feedback. Right. Yeah. So, and maybe he was just ready. Some guys are just ready to go no matter what the feedback. Right. So maybe there's that. But I also think that with the shoulder injury, was he going to be able to run? And you can't be a corner and not run, especially with a guy like him, because you're not kind of sure what he's going to run. Right. He doesn't on the field, he doesn't look like a 4.4 guy, so, and if he comes out and he doesn't look like that, then you're wondering, where is he going to get drafted? They want to see that. They're going to want that 40 time. And if you've got a bump shoulder and you can't test, then I think that, I'm going to guess that probably had something to do with it, because like you said, the timing of it, you could see a couple of people saying hey, we're going to be back now, but it's pretty rare. Most of the time, it's after the bowl game, when there's if people remember, Kevin Austin last year was right after the bowl game, he's out, right?
I mean, I think for Hart too, because he said in the post that he's not going to be able to play, because I assume he's going to have some sort of procedure on it, so he's not going to be able to play.
Yeah, I believe I heard he is having surgery. Yeah,
right. So that's probably speeds up his process. But I don't think, to your point, I don't think he's probably gotten an evaluation yet. I don't think that happens for a couple weeks now, like if not like a month away. So, but look, great news for Notre Dame. I think it really bolsters what they're doing in the secondary. I thought they needed to get secondary help regardless, just because you want to try to upgrade, right? You always want to try to upgrade your spot. You can get someone to come in, and I thought they were going to have to address that second corner position, and now you don't have to. So that's huge, right? And he's been an effective player this year. Gave up 50% completion percentage, which is really good for a corner. You want to have someone of that pedigree in there. Obviously, a ton of starts, a ton of experience. And look, you have obviously Ohio State on the schedule next year. You have USC on the schedule next year, right? So you need experience and you need talent in that spot. So. I do want to shout out Josh Miller for joining the show because I told him to do it on Twitter. And I appreciate you joining the show, Josh. And I think everyone should follow suit.
You gotta love it.
Josh did the right thing. Josh did the right thing. All right, Jamie. So let's talk a little portal a little bit. I think we know, the quarterback situation. We saw Hudson Card go into, or he announced he's going to go into the portal. I don't know that he's officially in the portal yet. And that's a name that Christian kind of put out there last week. And he did a little background on Hudson Card. Have you seen him play? What do you think of him as a player?
I've only seen him briefly. I think traits wise, he's a guy that, you would want. Like, he's got like the kind of arm. He's a good athlete. I think, he's a guy that with a high ceiling because of those traits. So from that perspective, I think, he could be really good. And I know like some people at Texas were like really high on him. And especially people who covered the team that thought that he was better than Quinn Ewers this year. But they wanted, there's obviously more that goes into it than who's being the best in terms of who starts there. So I think there's definitely like people who are in the Card camp and then other people are in the Ewers camp. And I think too, the one thing that I've heard repeatedly about him is like pocket presence. And, obviously that's not ideal. You don't want to hear like somebody doesn't have great pocket presence. At the same time, I think one of the benefits of going to a place like Notre Dame is look how many times you got a clean pocket to throw from.
Right. Yeah.
Like that was one of the things too, which was probably one of the more frustrating things when you were like, somehow, Drew Pine had a clean pocket on 80% of his dropbacks today, but he only completed 50% when he had a clean pocket or something like that. Right. Like, and that's just something that, you should, every quarterback should be dealing when they have a clean pocket. They just should. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, I think, that's something you worry about a little bit less, obviously, when you're thinking about the big games, but pocket presence can certainly improve. It's not something that's just like totally innate for everybody. But to me, he's like definitely an intriguing guy. And if like Notre Dame landed him, I think people should be happy.
Yeah. It's an interesting question that Jay Lehman puts on because like would Card start if he came to Notre Dame?
Yes.
So it's one of those things like you think he would be better than Buckner or Pine.
Yes.
But I don't think it's like Jack Cohn. When Jack Cohn came, it was like he's gonna start. And like everyone knew.
Yeah, it's not the same.
I think Card would have to earn
more tape out there. Yeah,
right. It's a very interesting dynamic this year. So like Devin Leary, like I think if Devin Leary was to come to
100%, yeah, he'd start.
It's like okay, like everyone understands he's been a captain, he's been a multi-year starter before. So it just like everyone gets it at that point, right? It's like Devin Leary is going to be the starting quarterback. And that's fine. I think Hudson Card would be a little bit more of a competition, which again, it's an odd thing because you have Buckner, who was the kind of heir apparent guy, and he gets hurt, right? He didn't look great, but at the same time, I don't think that the staff is going
to. It's like not enough of a sample size to judge him,
right? That you don't know, right? So he has to come in. And he's going to want to compete for it. And then Michael Pendergast asks a good question is then where does Angeli fit into that? Where does Pine fit into that? Right? Like this year is a lot. I'm going to use the word messier just because maybe I should say complicated. It's a little bit more complicated than it was when they brought in Jack Cohn, because it was like you had freshman Drew Pine, you had freshman incoming freshman Buckner. You needed someone, right? And so Cohn, it was just like a natural thing. This one is you have bodies, but you don't have the sure thing, right? You don't have a sure thing. And that's why you're bringing in a quarterback, and it makes it a little bit more complicated. There's so many moving parts to the conversation. And Tim Jones asked a good question here. Didn't Larry have a significant injury? He did. He tore his pec. And so that's another one where it's like if they brought him in, when is he healthy? Can he go through spring ball? How available is he going to be? And so that is a kind of an open question about the whole operation, what things are going to do, or how Notre Dame's going to handle this. And I have a question for you is just, I guess, of the names that have kind of been bandied about, right? So Leary is one. I think Card is another one. Obviously McNamara is out there. I think Sims is out there.
I think it's like 0 chance.
Fine. I mean, I'm just saying the name.
Yeah.
I don't. To me, I don't even want to hear about it. Like, to your point. But I guess of the names that you've heard that could possibly come out, there's the kid from Tulsa, Michael Pratt, who could, or no, I'm sorry, Tulane. He could come out. There is a Tulsa quarterback, Bryn. What's it? Do you know his first name? I know his last name is Bryn.
Davis Bryn.
Davis Bryn. That's what it is. So all those guys, like all the guys that you've heard, like who is your kind of like, this is the guy that I want?
I don't really have one. And that's like the honest answer, because well, one thing too with Bryn, I think that'd be interesting now because Willie Fritz is staying at Tulane.
Yeah.
So that I think changes, the dynamic there. So I think if probably took the Georgia Tech job, maybe he's going to Georgia Tech, or maybe he's looking for somewhere else, whatever's the best. And now I wonder if he probably just stays at Tulane. So that's something, but I don't really have one because I think there's so much like variance of like, I think I like the idea. To me, I like the idea of a Hudson Card, and not just him specifically, but a player like him, because there's multiple years. And I like that because I think you look at, say, like a Hendon Hooker, who didn't actually win the Tennessee job when he first took that the transfer there, but then took it over and then took off, right? And he was not that good at Virginia Tech. He was fine, right? He was fine. He was more of a runner. And then he really took off. So I think that's almost the move, is to get somebody that you think can really grow and really benefit from like kind of like the talent around him, rather than, like Leary might be the best, right? I think he's probably on paper, you would just say like, I mean, he threw for 35 and 5 in 1 year. And you're like, wow, okay. Like, I mean, you sold, take this guy, but you're going to get him for a year. And is it, and honestly, it could be good. It could be really good. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you still have, there's a lot in a year that you have to get. So like, think about like this with like Caleb Williams. And obviously he's an exception. You're not there isn't a Caleb Williams, out of any of the names there. But the fact that this guy's got another year at USC, right? Like, I mean, he's going to be better next year, which is scary, but that's just how it is. Right. So, I think like, because there is no Caleb Williams type, and maybe that guy is just not out there yet, and that could happen or whatever. But because there isn't that, I think it makes it like a lot harder. And like, to be honest, like I haven't like watched enough of all of these guys. I will say, I know Benjamin Hutchins mentions Tanner McKee here, and I think my assumption is I think that's more of like dream casting for people to throw him out because I think he's going to go to the NFL. But if that guy was looking around, he would 100% be my number one choice because I've seen a lot of Tanner McKee, and I think he's great. I just think Stanford is trash, and like their O-line is trash, and like they didn't have great receivers and whatever. To me, he would be slam dunk number one guy. And I know you'd only get him for a year or whatever, but like, I mean, he's a guy that I think could come to Notre Dame and then be a first round pick after. Like, and I think you take that in a second.
Right. And Brendan makes a good point. The quarterback that ends up transferring Notre Dame might not even know he's transferring right now. So like Caleb Williams, for example, like he wasn't going anywhere. And then Riley left and suddenly he was going somewhere. Right. And so it could that like, so I guess the way that happens for Notre Dame is Tommy Rees takes another job, and then, you know, Marcus Freeman brings in a offensive coordinator who has a guy, right? Or, you know, who could that be? I mean,
it could be anybody, but yeah, that's one way. Another way is say like Ryan Day, who's like, I mean, I'm 45-5, I'm getting heat, and all of a sudden somebody offers him an NFL job and he takes it, you know, like,
right. Yeah.
That could happen. All of a sudden Ohio State, that just a bunch of dominoes can open up there. Not that Ohio State has a, you know, they don't have like a top guy right now, but I'm just saying like this, that's just the type of thing that can happen. Like I certainly didn't think that, I mean, I think even Luke Fickell was surprising to Wisconsin to me. Like I didn't see that coming. By the way, like for all the people like Luke Fickell, future Notre Dame head coach, still out there now that he's at Wisconsin because it's still a step up. So, like I think one of these things that I think, you know, there's probably going to be some movement, more movement than you think. With just assistance and stuff, and that'll be the dominoes that kind of make things move.
Bernie with some wishful thinking, waiting on Mayer and Foskey to run it again. Let's go. I'm
sorry,
you know,
Bernie,
I mean, look, I love the power of positive thinking. I really do. That's very positive thinking on that. I don't see that happening. But yeah, so it's interesting. You know, it's one of those things like you just got to let it play out. And once the dominoes start falling, like for real, that's when you can really see movement on that front. And
they'd be fortunate to get Mayer and Foskey play in a bowl game, I think.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So there's that. So let's keep it on the portal topic, Jamie. So who do you, I guess, so we know quarterback, they're looking at quarterback. Is there a specific position where you think they need to get extra help there, whether it's at wide receiver? I think Viper is one where people talk about a lot, like defensive end, defensive tackle, you know, defensive back, linebacker. I don't see that, but I mean, just, is there any position in your mind where it's like they need to get somebody there?
I think Viper, for sure, they have to get somebody. I think so. You know, even if they're able to get Justin Admiral, convince him to come back for a 6th year, I still think you still need to get somebody there. Just because like they just didn't show enough trust in like a Botello, or if you're going to move somebody, or we have no idea what you're going to get from like a Josh Burnham yet there or whatever. So I think that is probably top of the list of like, probably get somebody, you know, that is almost like the receiver of last year where you're like that. And I'd say on defense in general, I think safety is next. I think they should try to get somebody at safety. I think that is, to me, a priority because I think even though you feel good about like X Watts and I think like his future, and I think he's going to be a starter next year. And I think, you know, I think the ceiling is very high on him. I'm very high on X Watts and what he can do, but I think like it's him and basically Ramon Henderson. And what do we got in Ramon Henderson? Are they going to move a corner? Like, could they move a Clarence Lewis or something? What are they going to do? Is there going to be like another young guy? Obviously, like if you get Payne Bowen, then you're there, but then you don't want to have to rely on like Payne Bowen. You're for sure going to start or whatever, right? And all of these things. So I think they need to get somebody at safety. And then the other two positions on defense for me are if you can get an elite guy. If you can get an elite nose, that's a spot, 100%, right? 100% get a guy there. If you can get an elite linebacker, take him, right? I think that's how I kind of view it. But if not, then don't take anybody at those positions. And I mean, let's move on. We'll move on to offense after, but just let me. What do you think about the defense?
So the thing with like the Viper stuff. When is there a Viper? Like when is there like a really good Viper in the?
It's extremely rare. That's the thing. That's why they needed somebody in the class.
And the other question too is like, when, let's say that Viper becomes available, is that Viper going to go to Notre Dame?
Probably not. Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing that I'm kind of it's like they're okay. Because that's the whole thing with USC is like and like there's so many schools that it's like they're going to get the top guys because they're doing the NIL thing, and Notre Dame isn't really, right? So it's like that's the thing. I mean, but the kid from Florida State, Jared Verse, who it's like you got to find someone like that where it's like he's not well known, and it's like he has a skill set that can be good for you, and then he can come in and be a really good player. As far as the rest of it, like I think that the thing with Watts is he is a guy where it's like you want to get him in the rotation. You definitely want the rotation, but like at the same time, there is a level higher than what he's playing at right now. And just like, like the plays that he made in the USC game, right? Like he made a couple plays where it's like, those are really solid plays. But then like, there's also interceptions there that are available and need to be made, and you need to get stops. Right. And that's like, it's just that's the way you got to get him off the field, right? You can't miss on some of that stuff. And so there's just a higher level, right? And same thing with like Clarence Lewis and, like you said, Ramon Henderson. It's like if you can bring in a guy where it's like a Nick McLeod type, who's like someone who started for 2 years at an ACC school and is a captain, then like that's a no-brainer, right? So like that's the type of guy that you need. I think with linebacker, I think they have so many bodies. Like you need to be able to. I think Notre Dame and Al Golden need to be able to.
They need to develop those guys. One of these,
like you have, like James.
They have to get those guys going,
right? Like you have to be able to find a way to get a good.
You got to get the best out of those guys. I think that is 100%. Like should be the number one goal for the defense of the offseason is these. I mean, are you going to not hit on any of them? You have to hit on them. And I understand, like, you don't want to rush and just say, like, these guys are busts after this time. But it's like, I mean, Culley's going to go into year 3. It's got to be time for him next year. It has to be. It has to be. That's just kind of where it's at, right? And, but just kind of like, furthering on, I think, like, with safety. So, the McGill kid who went in for Stanford, I think that is, I don't know if Notre Dame is looking at him, and he's a bit small. Like he's like 5'9", whatever, right? He's not the biggest guy. So he's not like, whatever, but he's a good ball player, man. Like I'd take him. Like I like that, but that type of guy, I think is the perfect type of guy at safety. And then at Viper, I think a lot depends on, so are they going to take undergraduate transfers? Are they going to do that? Is that going to be easier for them? Because if not, then you can just basically forget it. You're not getting to get a 5th year, really outstanding Viper, right? And then if it comes down, because if not, then you just basically roll with what you have, and maybe you move, like, someone mentioned, like maybe moving like a Maris to there or something like that. Like do whatever you got to do, like there. But that's the way you got to kind of look at it, because okay, here's like a perfect example of like, if they could get an undergraduate guy and then you're just whatever. And I'm not saying he's going to be available or anything like that, but like Nick Herbig, who's at Wisconsin, double-digit sack this year, I'd like him. He's a good player. I liked him when he was coming out in high school too. Just very much a Kahano Kia kind of mold type of player, and very productive for Wisconsin. Well, things are moving at Wisconsin. Leonard, what the heck's going to happen with him? Whatever kind of thing. Like who knows? So, and then Fickle's going in there. If that guy became available, like that is like boom, boom, boom. That answers your prayers, right? Like that is the kind of thing. Or like the kid who from Boston College, who's like only like a sophomore, who's number 6. I can't. I mean, his name is too hard for me to remember and pronounce at the moment, but like he's a good player who's like an undersized Viper type. Like if that guy, because who knows what the heck's going on with Boston College? They suck, right? So it's like, right. I mean, is that guy going to want to leave? Whatever. If that guy wants to leave and you could take an undergraduate, then those are the kind of guys that I think, and probably it wouldn't be like crazy, like, I think you could fit at Notre Dame too. So, but it's just like, can they take them? Can they take those guys? And that's like kind of like another question.
There's a question from Nicholas Henriksen. Is Maris moving to Viper feasible?
I mean, I don't really know, because I think like one of the things that I commented to this on someone asked about Marist and like the difference in him and as an athlete, but before the injury and prior. And I thought one of the big things with him before, because when I watched him in that camp, when everyone was kind of raving about like, man, this guy's going to be a star. And that was like consensus. Like that wasn't like, that was like everybody, or not even consensus. It was like unanimous. Like everybody thought that this was whatever, because he looked just dynamite and was making plays and whatever. And to me, and fair, to be fair, this year we didn't really see any of that in camp. We didn't see anything really in camp. So and I mean, even the practice we went to, he was out because it was like, oh, whatever. They're like managing him. And Marcus Freeman had mentioned like, oh, he's still getting back to, he's not quite 100% and all that. And you're like, man, this injury. So I think some of the things with his injury, I think that's kind of still there, because I just don't see the kind of twitch and flexibility that he showed. He had this one play in the previous, in like the 2021, like August of 2021, where he was lined up off the edge and he like just like dipped his shoulder and got underneath, and it was Josh Luggett tackle. And he dipped his shoulder, or it actually might have been Carmody, sorry, because Lug got hurt. But he dipped his shoulder, and it was like his shoulder, it was like some Matrix stuff where he was like on the ground and then like bending back up. And you're just like, I haven't seen, like, I've been to a lot of Notre Dame practice. I haven't seen anyone do anything like that athletically as a pass rusher. As great as Isaiah Foskey is, he can't do that. Right. Like I never saw Julian Okwara do that. I never saw Dalen Hayes do that. And I saw Maris Leofeld do that. And I was like, whoa, this dude is different. But I never saw that anything close to that once with him as a player this year. And, so can he kind of get that thing? Is this injury one of these things where it's like it's because sometimes it takes like 2 years for a guy to get back to what he was. If that's the case, then I could see him being like, a bit of like an undersized like Viper there. If not, then I don't know. I wouldn't be sure about it.
We've seen a lot of like I saw there was comments about Junior Tuihalamaka playing Viper. We saw that in the what game was it?
Syracuse.
A little bit. I think we did in Syracuse. Yeah, like he's playing Viper, and it's like that's a weird one, right? Like usually, like someone who's like a Mike, and now he's playing Viper. I mean, whatever. I'm just that's a name that they put over there. So that's I guess that's something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah. And it was hard because, you don't want to judge a guy based on one game, but he looked out of place there. Like he looked,
Yeah.
like definitely like, oh, I'm like playing this position in a game for the first time in my life or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a lot more to do. Like there's different responsibilities and that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
he needs another year to kind of get used to that. Joe Bro is asking about the McCullough boys. I guess Desan is a good example of someone like that. Like, do you think that there's anything there for Desan as far? I mean, I could see him. He's kind of like a rover-ish kind of guy. Like I know he plays D end a little bit, but like what do you see that being any sort of a fit
I
without
don't
knowing at
know.
all if that's even an option or like they're thinking about it? I don't know
Like
about that.
I do know he played for, and was pretty good for Indiana this year, like in terms of just like his production and stuff for like a true freshman. So I think he's a guy that if they were like, yeah, I want to go play, where my dad is, like, yeah, you take him in a second, and he would be. I think because he's like 6'5" too, right? Like he's like 6'5".
Yeah, he's a
and
big
probably
boy.
like,
He's tall.
yeah, and he's pretty long. Like so, I think he's probably would probably be a Viper candidate, but like one of these guys who's just, yeah, I mean. He would be a really, really intriguing guy if they could get him. But I don't know how that works. Like, I do wonder too. Like, I think there was a lot of like, it would have been like a really bad look if like he's like, I'm coming to Notre Dame too. Like, I think Indiana, especially because Jabron Payne already like did that kind of thing, and it was like, that was kind of a bad look. So I think. I do wonder about that, but I mean, a year is a little bit different, but especially considering that like Indiana stunk this year, I think, it could be open. But I have no idea. Like we have not heard any intel that he was like, oh, he's coming or anything like that.
Yeah. No. Do you see Rajon's asking you where will Burnham end up? Do you see him being a Viper?
Well, he's definitely a Viper. He's definitely a Viper. Like, and even Golden was asked about him, and he was like, oh, he's going to be like huge. Like they think he's going to be like Flosky big. So like at 260 type, and which, I mean, I didn't know that he was going to get to that, but I was like, whoa, like, cause I thought he was going to be like 250 ish or something like that. But anyone who's seen him is like, he has a super, super long frame, and he's a heck of an athlete. Like I'm so high on Josh Burnham and like his potential. And I'm glad that they moved him. I'm glad he didn't just play the year at linebacker. And then they were like, we're going to move you to Viper in the spring. Like, no, because if you think he's going to be a Viper full time, move him there right now, get him there. Cause it's like, it's a different world, right? Like it's a totally different world, and get him like, I'd be lying if I said I knew enough that he's going to be like, oh, he's going to be like a player next year. But also too, like I'm so high on him as an athlete and stuff that I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden you're like, oh, Josh Burnham is like, definitely like the number 2 Viper, or like maybe even pushing to start. Like I wouldn't be shocked by that.
Yeah. We've got a K Blint coming in from Germany. So first of all, thank you very much for that. That's very nice. Greetings from Germany. Go Irish. What do you think about Alexander Ahrensberger? Is there a possibility that we'll get more playing time next season? Thanks for the good show.
I think there's definitely a possibility. Like, I think it's tough because, Nana will be back. You're expected to be back. And, so if you get Nana back, and then a lot of it depends on Mills and what they do with Mills, because I think Mills is his definite position that he's going to play in the NFL. He's going to be like an interior guy. He's going to be like a 3 tech. So now that Adam Enola is gone, do you move him back inside? And if that becomes the case, then then all of a sudden that next, the rotation kind of opens up there at like kind of big end. But, there's also like Aiden Gobera, and there's like Tyson Ford at 3 tech too, right? And there's all these possibly. So I think a lot a lot of where, Ahrensberger to me is like, obviously he's a big guy. He's long. He's got a good motor. You see the guy plays hard whenever he's out there. But like, whenever I see him out there when he's played more during like non-garbage time, he's always kind of been inconsistent to me, where you're like, he got reach blocked on this and you just can't, like, or he lost contain on this, whatever. So I think that's probably just like those kind of things are probably what we're keeping him from being like a regular guy. And sometimes too, and it sucks because, and I've been this guy too before, where all of a sudden, like, you're kind of like on the fringe of being in the rotation, and then you're in there and one play is bad, and then it's like you don't play the rest of the game. Like, that's whatever. Like, I distinctly remember there was a play where I'm supposed to, kind of slant inside of the tackle, and and I didn't get picked up, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be a sack because the Will linebacker's coming out to the outside, and he's going to be free, and it's like either me or him are going to get a sack. The Will linebacker didn't do his job well, so then it looks like I lost contain, but that wasn't the call. But I didn't play again the rest of that game, right? Like, that's just like kind of how it can be for like a guy like when you're like Alex Ahrensberger. So I would say he needs a really good spring. He needs a really good spring to kind of step forward, because there's a lot of guys pushing there, and what they do at Mills will matter. Yeah.
Notre Dame Nation with the super chat. Thank you very much. Why didn't Maris spy Caleb?
Well,
I think he kind of did.
He kind of did. Yeah. I mean, it didn't really matter what they did, to be honest. Like,
there were so many times they had him surrounded. It's
they literally have like 3 guys free.
Yeah.
It is actually insane if you think about it, because I don't know about you, Greg, but you probably saw like the PFF had the Notre Dame with like a 44.8% pressure rate or whatever it was, right? It was in the 40s. Yeah. And I was like, it looked like 70%.
I don't understand that. I don't
get it. I don't get it either.
I feel like he was running around all the time.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, maybe you could say like 44%, but like all the times it's like, oh, so everybody had a bust up front. Everybody had a bust up front where they're like 4 guys beat all their guys. Like, it happened a lot. Right. And I mean, he's a wizard is all you can say. He's a wizard.
You have to, so many times you get like, so the line is, they're working, and then they get free, and you have to be very aware of the angles, because he knows where to escape and that sort of thing. And once you get free, you do have to be aware of working upfield instead of working at him, because then he can just spin away. And so, but when you're in the play, you're not always spatially aware, like right in that moment, right? So it's one thing to start your rush in your right lane, but once you're working with the lineman and then you break free and you go get him, like you think, okay, I'm free, I'm gonna go get him. You still do have to be aware of where he is and where you are, and get upfield. So it's difficult, right? Like when you're playing someone like that, he's very talented. So I don't know that there was more scheme wise that they could have done, because you try to surround him, you do other things, and then he's going to exploit something else in the defense, right? And so there's always a give and take with that situation. Obviously, they could have played better. You need to finish plays. You need to make plays when they're available. And they just didn't. Before we wrap up USC, though, I do want to get to the offense in the portal. And I assume they don't need help on the line. You don't need help at running back. We've already talked about quarterback. You probably don't need help at tight end. I don't think there's a tight end that's going to become available that makes you say like, oh, this is a take over what we have already. But wide receiver is one, again, where it's like I think there's a need there, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for someone to come in. So I get like, what type of receiver are you looking for, Jamie? Because when I'm watching the game, Notre Dame's got good wideouts, but the one thing about them is there's not a ton of burst and there's not a ton of speed. So it's like it takes them kind of a long time to get down the field. Right now they make plays and that sort of thing, but like even the crossing route to Colsey, right where Prine hits
that was a long developing play.
It was a long developing play, and the safety is the one who came and hit him in the face. So that's kind of like, man, the safety was that was a delay, right? The safety had Estime on in man, and he saw Estime was blocking, so then he came free. I mean, so Pine gets it in the face as he throws it. So I mean, I'm just thinking like speed guy, kind of someone who can get vertical really quickly. What are your thoughts on that?
That's what I see too. Especially because I look at like I look at Jaden Thomas, and I think like, just, what do you got to say? It, big slot. Like, I think that's what you think, big slot. And when you see him, and then I think you think Colsey, you think of the big jump ball catch possession guy, right? And he can get vertical a bit, but it's like he's not gonna wow you, right? Like with kind of like a Miles Boykin type, right? Where you're like, oh, he can get down there, but he's not going to like just lose anybody with his speed. So I think like obviously like they're bringing in speed in the class, and I think that's important. But I think if you can get a guy that could be like more of a dynamic like speed after the catch guy, I think that would be big. I totally agree with that. And I also think that the one other spot on offense where I would look at it is interior line. And I don't think they absolutely need anyone. But like, I think it would help, like, I think like, okay, so look at Michigan took the Virginia center this year. The guy has been awesome for them, right? Like, if there's a guy like that comes around, I think you got to look at him. Like, and here's like a kind of like a strange one that people might be like, what? Like, but the Coleman kid who's just went in the portal from Cal, who played left tackle for him this year, but he's not a left tackle. He's actually a guard. Cal is like, their offensive line situation is so bad. Most teams, it's like they got 4 tackles starting on the line. Well, they had 4 guards starting on the line, and he was a guard who played guard earlier and was really good. He was like a second team all Pac-12 guy. And then he had to play left tackle because they didn't have anybody else. And he was like completely miscast there. But I actually think he's a pretty decent guard. So maybe not him specifically, but just a guy like that, whatever, right? Where you can get somebody to compete at guard that, you think could push to start there. I think, or definitely a guy that you could really like just, put in ink there. Like, that'd be another option, I think, to look at.
Okay. Rajon asking about Tyree. Do you think he comes back? I'm going to ask you this. What do you think his role is next year?
Okay. Well, one, I think they almost need to. I think they should have kind of transitioned to him into this year. Is he should have always been the hybrid slot, like the running back hybrid slot guy. And I think that's kind of where he needed to go. But for whatever reason, they didn't do that. And I think part of that had to do with like what they wanted to do on offense, the quarterback. And obviously you're playing heavy a lot, so you're not doing that kind of stuff. But like, to me, he's a guy who he needs to get more touches catching the football on the perimeter. And that's the whole thing. And that's what like he had, I can't remember what game it was, but he had like those, maybe it was Clemson, but he had like the 2 ones where it was like, they got him out, on a quick screen out there. And then there was another one where they did like the little RPO action where they got him. Like, that to me is his role in the offense, is doing those kind of things. And it's not even that, like, I think you saw, like, even in this game, like, he can still like make jump cuts in the hole and do all these kind of things, but it's like if you're gonna play like with this like heavy identity, and you're gonna play like 12 personnel, 13 personnel, we want to like bully you and all this stuff. Chris Tyree is not that back to play in that offense. He's not. He's more of like, you're spreading it out Baylor splits and like, oh, this guy gets a crease and he just running and hitting the 80-yard home run, right? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think next year, because they're bringing in Jadarian Price is going to be healthy. So like, if Jadarian Price is healthy, then he's a speed guy and he's a natural runner, right?
Yes.
And so it's going to be hard. And then you have Dylan Edwards, who's another speed guy. You have Jeremiah Love, who's another speed guy. I just think you got to get him out. You got to get him.
You got to get him in that role, because if he's in that, he'll get lost in the shuffle if he's just doing the same thing that he's doing this year. If
he doesn't do that, then he will go somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Like that makes sense. So that's that situation. So all right, that's the portal stuff. Let's just wrap up USC really quickly, Jamie. I was curious if you thought there was how much do you think so this is my assumption, right? Is Tariq Bracy's talking to the media on Tuesday. Stands to reason he was healthy then.
Yeah.
Right. If he had practiced on Tuesday, game plan's already in. So when does he get hurt? Right. Is it hurt on Wednesday? So if he gets hurt on Wednesday, he's practicing Wednesday as well. So they have a game plan set for that. Do you think they had to change the game plan for Tariq Bracy to miss the game along with Cam Hart? And if so, like, how much do you think that actually affected what they did? And is there anything else like they could have done to kind of do a better job slowing down USC's offense?
Okay, well, I don't know if I saw Bracy in pads.
Oh, he was definitely in pads.
In pads. So that made me think that he tweaked it in warm-up. Like, it was like that, like, and maybe, or maybe they thought that something, because remember, I can't remember what game it was, but he tweaked his hamstring and everyone was like, oh no.
It was BYU, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he grabbed it and I was like, that's not good. And the thing is with a hamstring is those linger, and that's something that could be the whole year. So it might've been something where he was just managing it for the whole time. And I think one of the things that you can say about it too is that Bracy early in the year is making a bigger impact. And I think after that hamstring, he didn't make the same kind of impact. So it could have been something that was bothering him the whole year. So I don't know. I mean, it definitely had to have had an impact on how they went. Like, so here's a perfect example of like that Navy game. They thought JD Bertrand was going to play. And then, unforeseen circumstances, they were like, hey, Junior Tui Halamaka, you're starting. Like, and he's like, what? He's like, I was going to plan to eat a Snickers on the sidelines. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he might've played a little bit, but he wasn't going to play that much. And so I think like when you look at it from that perspective, Jade Mickey might've thought like, yeah, I'm going to play in this game. I'm going to play 66 snaps or whatever. I don't think he thought that. So I think, and all they did there, I think that, I mean, it does, it changes your, not that you should always be like the next man in mentality. You should always have that. But it's still like, I imagine Bracy would have, they would have done something where like Bracy would have started outside and Lewis would have been like in the slot or something like that. Or they would have split more and Lewis would have played a little bit. And then Mickey would have played a little bit, and then Bracy would be sometimes inside in the slot corner and stuff like that. And I think that had I mean, obviously not having those guys had an impact, which also made like the idea that Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit like didn't even mention it. Right. It's just like, what? Like but to me, and it's also, and I honestly too, and I know I've been ripping on those guys all week for like how like they only do big picture stuff and it's like they don't get into the details of the game and or whatever. I stand by it. But how much of that is like the sideline reporter like should be on that and kind of know what the heck's going on there? How much is that like the spotter up in the stands knowing that kind of stuff? But like all that kind of stuff. Like to say it didn't have an impact on how they would call it absolutely had an impact, because I think from that point on, you look at it, they basically decided like we had to play one-on-ones versus the run the whole game, right? That's how they did. And that's one of the reasons they got run on, really, right? It's maybe the biggest reason why they got run on, right? And so if they had, I mean, they knew they were going to have Hart, but if they had Bracey, would it have been that way? I think they would have mixed it up a little bit more. So I think it did have an impact.
I mean, I think if like Austin Jones and Jordan Addison just weren't playing, I think they probably would have mentioned it. You know,
yes,
like it's one of those things. Like you should know, like there's essentially two starters from Notre Dame in their secondary who aren't playing. It's like, why is Jaden Mickey out there? He's not usually out there. Like, oh, here's why. So that's that. Great show as always, Indian Nation. Does Marcus Free? I assume he means Tommy Reese.
It's like TF.
Yeah, I don't know what TF is. I assume it's Tommy Reese.
It's probably.
So, question: Do you think Tommy Reese comes back? And first of all, I don't think there's any chance Marcus Freeman moves on from him, like without Tommy Reese taking another job. So, do you think Tommy Reese takes another job this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the more of the real question, is like whether or not Tommy Reese chooses to leave. I honestly don't know, because I'm going to guess there's going to be opportunities out there.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's more or less likely than it was in August?
I think it's about the same. I always kind of thought it was like a 50-50 deal, you know, like, I mean, I think as the years go on, like it's obvious Tommy Reese, like it's so funny because like, you know, Jack Swerbick made the big deal out of, you know, we had to make sure that Tommy was coming back too. And I'm in a sense, in terms of like the recruiting class, I get it, whatever. Right. But like, I mean, do you think that Tommy Reese is going to be like the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame for like the next like 5 years? Cause it's not like, that's not going to happen. So it's a matter of when, not if. And I would say like, it's totally a 50-50 deal to me. Like if you told me he was coming back, I'd be like, okay. And if you told me if we found out like literally as we finish the show, Tommy Reese is the new offensive coordinator in Nebraska, I'd be like, okay. I'd be like, I didn't see it coming, but I'm like, but I'm not totally shocked. You know, like that's kind of how I feel about it.
Okay. Yeah. I to me, I think just from my vibes in the way it just seems like the wind is blowing. It seems more likely now than I thought in August that he'd be back. I think it's just more to do with A, opportunity, and B, I don't feel like he has the juice that he did in August. And maybe that's just perception, right? Like in my own kind of.
Well, the offense, like, I mean, I think that's fair because they were 58th in yards per play. You know, the offense was like, and no matter how you say it, and not to say that I think it's certainly a lot less on him than it would be the personnel. But I mean, how many people are like, you know, we really want to hire this guy because you like putting in the press release, like this guy, they were like this on offense or whatever. Instead of having to put like, I hate it in the stupid bios and like in 4 consecutive games, they scored 30 points or more. It's like, you know, they were searching for stats to use, like whatever. Right. Like, but I think that's, so last year would have been an easier sell. But I mean, in saying that, the people who respect him are going to hire him no matter what. Like he's like, I don't think he's not going to be a hire at a place where it matters about the flash of the hire. Yeah. You know what I mean? It is the way I would put it.
Yeah. All right. Let's end it there, Jamie. We'll start another topic. We'll pick up all this stuff tomorrow. We're going to have another show tomorrow at the same time, 8:30 Pacific time, 11:30 Eastern. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for all the good questions. It was a really good show. We brought a lot of stuff, so we'll continue this kind of I guess overview. I guess we could do that, and we can talk about more USC if people want, but we can probably move on a little bit. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Hit up irasportsdaily.com. It's a really good time to join up. Lots of fun conversations over there. Lots of good information. Lots of good recruiting stuff. All those things. It's a really good time to just come join up on irasportsdaily.com. If this is your first time listening to the show, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We might have had some internet issues, I think, because I'm at a different house, and I think the internet might be a little bit slow. So apologies for that. Apologies, but hit us up tomorrow, same time. Thank you very much to everyone again for joining the show, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.